Hello everybody, welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today I'm going to be experimenting with watercolor and ink painting. Now with this video it's going to be kind of just me playing around. Won't have a really good format to it. I'm live streaming and kind of just want to focus on the experimentation. So I'll let you know what I'm doing, and if anybody comes into the live chat I'm gonna talk to them, say hello, but it's more experimental, and hopefully it'll give you all some ideas with painting and whatnot. So what I want to do is take my quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua and I'm going to saturate it. Then I'm going to take some Chinese ink and play around with kind of a monochromatic. Actually, you know what? I think I might take some colored inks first and then play with the black inks. We'll figure that out in a moment. But I want this to be super saturated. Let's grab this little sauce dish. There we go, we got one right here. And we have our Chinese ink. I think I got this at Hobby Lobby. I think it's also on Blick.com. I think it's also on Amazon. I've had this bottle for probably 2 or 3 years now, so it goes a long way. I also have this Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay ink, which is the permanent and light-fast India ink. It has some, I don't know if it's like dyed or pigmented or how they do it. Yeah, pigmented India ink. And let's grab crimson. I have the crimson going. And what I'm thinking is with these two, I'm going to put in the general location, idea, what have you, of maybe a sunset. And then we'll build up a monochromatic landscape with the black ink. We'll dry it off and then come back in with watercolor. So I guess that's the experiment. It should be fun. I do find whenever I take this ink, and I've used it maybe let's say 3 or 4 times on watercolor, wet and wet, that the initial application, let's say just like that, it seems to dry that area as well. And I'm not sure chemically what's taking place. If there's some sort of shellac hardening agent, or I don't know if it's a hardening agent, but something's happening there. And of course I'm live streaming this, so people will drop in. And how y'all doing? I'm not sure what you mean by paint insomnia. Are you having a hard time sleeping, so you're watching painting, or you're staying up late and painting? Here's the crimson. I find this crimson ink works well color-wise around the yellow. It's a little I don't want to say kitsch, but I guess that's the word I'll use. I don't know if that's the correct word for it. I think anything that's high key and bright is kitsch to me, because I like to paint dark and moody. Okay, so that kind of gets those two colors on there. And what that's going to do is it'll when it dries and the watercolor over it, it's not going to mix with the watercolor. Oh, it's 5 a.m. in Spain right now. So did you sleep at all, or you just still up at 5? Okay, here's the Chinese ink. And what I'm thinking is very dark and moody on the sides. Wonder how Dali would paint insomnia. I know a lot of Salvador Dali's paintings had to do with his dreams, especially the ants. That was like a reoccurring theme. Was I don't know if it was ants coming out of the body or what. Oh, so you stayed up until 5 watching Bob Ross streams? That's not a bad way to stay up, especially on a Saturday night. Okay, let's bring this over. We're going to push this black pigment around the black ink. It looks really weird and reflective on the screen, but as it dries, it gets a nice effect to it. That's the lighting that gives it that glare. Is it this camera, this light that does that? I wonder how many episodes they made for Bob Ross. I think that's Harrison the cat, who has made a meowing appearance in every single one of my videos. Oh, the stream's a lot relaxing. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's what time is it over here? I think it's about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock over in America, down in Louisiana. It's Saturday. I initially planned to do some oil painting, but I like to make videos for YouTube and the Patreon, but with work and everything, it's been kind of delayed lately. So what better time than now to make a video? And hopefully this stream is relaxing enough and that I yawn enough that it helps you all fall asleep too. And we're just playing with the Chinese India ink, just feeding it in wet and wet. It'll dry lighter, which I'd want to get it as dark as I can. But what happens is the water with the ink, it causes, you know, the refraction of light. I need to get some water over here. And then we can probably lift it back up. That ink underneath is probably dry already. Yeah. Let it come through so we don't have those harsh edges. And we'll kind of do that additive and subtractive method. And we'll build up a tonalist scene. And it'll be super moody. Catch those hairs from Hammy, the long-haired cat. We brushed him the other day and he looks super thin after the brushing, but I guess he's all fluffed up again. I don't know where my spray bottle is for wetting the areas. There it is. So if we need it to spray. This almost looks like one of JMW Turner's painting. There was one that I think was called The Burning. It was a ship burning at sea. Just has that movement to it. This is just taking a paper towel and lifting up pigment, and we'll create branches. This wouldn't be seen in normal light, like in normal atmospheric effects. But a lot of the times, some tonalism paintings will have the painting lit from the background, but it'll be the trees themselves will also have kind of a highlight on them. Thank you. Yeah, this is experimental. This painting. I've been playing with the inks so that they can dry and be light fast, and then watercolor on top, just so they don't muddy up. So that's been kind of like the experiment with those. But then this right here is how I'll approach some watercolor paintings if I'm doing kind of a two-colored painting. Like just a few moments ago, I live streamed. Where did I put it? Put it over here. I live streamed this one. It was playing with dioxine purple and lemon yellow and watercolor. Just kind of going back and forth, playing around, lifting, just playing wet and wet, and just building up kind of a just a dreamy type scene. Thank you. I appreciate that. My paper towel is soaked. I buy these things, the shop rags. Whenever the COVID lockdown kind of hit and all the paper towels and toilet paper was sold out, I just went to the automotive department of Walmart and just continued to pick up my shop rags. And that's what I use for painting, for oil painting and whatnot. Also, gloves. You know, at first a lot of latex gloves were sold out, and the nitrile gloves. And I just went to the home painting department of Walmart and just picked up gloves there. They were sold out in the front in the pharmacy section. And I just sometimes, you know, I have to use gloves for the different chemicals, but we have the different animals, so when I clean out animal cages, I have to put gloves on and whatnot. The one thing that was hard to find that made me nervous was rubbing alcohol. I have to apply allergy shots at home, and it was hard to find rubbing alcohol to clean my arm before I give myself the shot, or have the shot given. I'm gonna bring some water down in here. Interesting thing with the water, the spray bottles, you can apply it and get a bubbled effect. I'm just doing it just to show it. I don't know how it shows up on the screen, but you could also do that with actual rubbing alcohol as well. I think you can get that effect with salt, so that's another textured effect. That's the cool thing about watercolors. There's a lot of different ways to get effects. You just got to be careful not to overdo them. Watching a demo by a fantastic painter, still life and portrait painter, David LaFell. He was talking about the splattering painting and whatnot, where a lot of that is what it is. It's splatters, and sometimes they're not representational. And I'm going to take him out of context because he was just not a fan of just straight up splatter paintings like Jackson Pollock. But I think that the splattering, if you use it in a way to be representational of trees, you use it to be representational of clouds, foliage, and you make the paint work for you. So right here I could just go up the hake. I'm in that area where the screen has that reflection on it, so I don't know how well you can see it. I could probably just do it over here. Hey Hammy. Yeah. What's up, buddy? What's up? Your fur is flying everywhere in this room. What you got, Hammy? Yeah, this is just the Chinese ink. Oh, Hammy. Oh, we're gonna have to trim your claws. Are you trying to get up? I can't. I actually cannot let you get ink on you. I'm gonna kill you, Hammy. You're gonna hover awkwardly over the painting and look up and say hi. I can't have you get ink on you, buddy. You really can't come up for ink. Oh. I don't want to say I have a favorite cat, but I think Hammy's my favorite. Let's see. But that's the effects of long-haired Hammy. You can't. He's trying so hard to climb into my lap right now. Oh man. I never had. Also, I upload these videos to YouTube, and then my mom loves to watch them and then comment. And then if I mention my mom, she then will text me and say that she's internet famous every time I mention her. So, Mom, if you watch this, I'll make you internet famous. My parents, we only had a bird and an iguana and fish when I was growing up. We never had cats or dogs. Apparently, I mean, I was super allergic to cats and dogs. But that's no excuse, Mom, for not having cats and dogs. And then they, when they moved and I was in college and I didn't live with them anymore, they got a dog. I remember one time watching, I was a little kid, the movie Homeward Bound, and crying about how I wanted a dog. And my parents said no. But, anywho, yeah, that little story right there is mainly just if my mom winds up watching this, this video. So a few days from now, I'll probably get a message saying, what the hell? So, this is kind of very expressionist, very abstract. What I'm going to do, and unfortunately this will take away from the relaxation aspect of this video. I'm going to take the blow dryer to do a quick dry off so we can kind of see what's going on. So if you have headphones on, I'd recommend taking them off so I don't hurt your ears. It'll take about 10-20 seconds to dry it off. If you're watching, watch what's called the tonal shift. As it dries, you'll see some areas lighten up. Okay, so hopefully you're still there watching. The paper is actually still damp, but with this you probably saw an extreme tonal shift that took place. What occurs with water-based paints, pigments, inks, as it dries, as the water is removed, the refraction that would take place is not there anymore. So what you want to think about and compare it to is whenever you just walk outside and there's wet cement versus dry cement. Wet cement, wet blacktop is going to look darker. So now we're going to go on to the next stage of this experiment. What we had done so far was took a yellow ink and put it down, crimson ink and put it down to kind of get a little just permanent focus for what we're working with. Then we did just a lot of splash around wet and wet with the Chinese India ink, just the black. Now I figure we can take just a really awesome color combination, and it is quinacridone rose, and this tube has been given trouble, as you can see. Eventually doing something like that is going to get that tube to just, tear. But in the meanwhile, I'll just put out some Quin Rose, and I'm going to use Phthalo Green. Those two make a really, maybe it would be haunting grayish neutral, if I can find my Phthalo Green. There we go, Phthalo Green. I'm setting up a new palette tray with my two color combinations, my complementary colors opposite each other, just because my normal landscape palette, the tray itself is just overwhelmed. And then my other tray is dedicated to gouache. So here, we're going to, just start setting up a new tray for that. So, let's see. With this, we could play wet and wet on top of this already created scene. So let's saturate this with water. Let's do that. There's a little bit of pigment movement, a little bit of ink movement taking place. That's because I didn't get a super dry effect. I just, I didn't want to blow all y'all's ears away with that drying off. You can see how just also re-wetting will make it appear slightly darker, and that's because of that value shift. All right, so the paper is wet. It wasn't perfectly dry anyway. Let's mix these two together and play around with Phthalo Blue and Quin Rose on top of this essentially monochromatic underpainting with a little bit of yellow and red in there. So this is experimental. This isn't something I've done before. And what I'll do is let that underpainting be a little bit of a guideline and see how it affects it. I would like to be able to get rid of that glare right there. Just don't know how I can move this without blinding myself or y'all. So the kind of idea of this mixture is to allow the pinks and the greens to be there, while also allowing those two to mix together to get that neutral. So it just gives a really interesting effect. And we're going wet and wet, so we're not really getting any harsh edges. You can decide to either dry off and put dark quantities in. I could play around from there. And I was talking about value shifts earlier, where as things dry, it lightens. This color combination, I don't struggle with that too much, these two pigments together. I'm not sure why. You could see that green over the yellow ink. Let me pull back a little bit, see how much yellow we can get to exist. Is this one area on the paper just resisting pigment? It could be a flaw in the paper. It could have also been my hands. I have a beard, and oil in my beard. And if you have oil or lotion or anything like that on your hands, it can form spots that'll resist on a paper. Yep, that's right, Hammy. So with this approach, it's building up now darker tonal values. Looks, every time I wind up playing with ink underneath a painting, it always winds up looking very illustration-y. Where this time I'm doing kind of a wash, a tonal buildup. Other times just kind of feeding in a little bit. But regardless of what I do, it always seems very early 1900s. And I really don't know why. So, let's see. Throw a little bit more of that quinacridone rose down. I might have mentioned whenever I do like the two color paints on top of anything wet and wet, I use a lot of pigment, a lot of paint. This is anybody that's interested in paints. Da Vinci brand is kind of an artist grade, professional grade. The Van Gogh is the equivalent essentially of a student line, but like a high quality student line. It is light fast and whatnot. It just has less pigment in the binder. It's if you're familiar with the brand Winsor & Newton, Winsor & Newton has Cotman brand, and this is essentially another brand's Cotman level of paint. And Cotman, there's a lot of professional painters that will use just that. Anyway, so this is probably, I don't know if this is about an $8-10 tube. This is about a $3 tube. So if you're looking to try out that color combination, you can do that. You can get it in Cotman brand. You can get it just in the Van Gogh off of either Blick or Jerry's Artorama. And sometimes if you go with a cheaper but light fast paint, you're less likely to fret about how much you put out and worry about wasting pigment. Because it when painting, it really does help not to be frugal. It might help to be frugal with texture techniques and whatnot, but it doesn't help to be frugal with your pigment load, I think. So we're just building up on top of that ink underpainting. Throwing shade at my mom earlier about us not having animals as pets. It's just totally fine. I love my mom. I was just throwing shade because I know she'll eventually watch this video. And we went over there 2 weekends ago for my mom's birthday. And so they have a dog now. That if you're joining us, the story was about how they got a dog after I moved out, and I always wanted a dog as a kid. Anyway, went over there for my mom's birthday, and I was like, "Oh, Rusty's got to come in the house." So Rusty comes in, and I got my mom Gentilly cake. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with that. It's like a really delicious cake. You know, it's just really good. And also, as a side note, my dad also got my mom a cake, and he didn't bother to like let me know that he got her a cake. So we wound up just doing cake after cake for her birthday, which was really awesome. It was a lot of fun. Just you know, eating cake after cake. But anyway, Rusty was climbing up on my mom's lap, and he's a yellow lab, while she's trying to sit on the couch eating cake, and he's just not making it. It was very obvious that he was trying to get the cake from her. Okay. So, just to bring everything up to speed, we did just a little bit of this yellow acrylic. I don't know if it's acrylic. Yeah, it's just India ink. Light fast, water fast, to put it there. So it would show through no matter what we did on top of it, so that it wouldn't mix and muddy and lift. We also did a little bit of crimson right in that area. Then, while it was still wet and wet, we used the Chinese ink, which is right here, and I fussed around with that quite a bit. Then we did a dry off. We saw the super drying shift that took place. We then used phthalo green and quinacridone rose watercolor in a mixture combination to get greens and pinks and neutrals on top of this, using the ink kind of as just kind of the bones just to build up upon. What we need to do now is dry it off and take a look and see what's happening. So I'm going to use the blow dryer. So if you have earbuds on or anything like that, take them out, turn off the sound for a second. I'm sorry, I don't really know any other way to turn the sound off, you know, during this. So I'm going to do a quick blow dry. It'll take about 10-15 seconds. Alright, so drying off after watercolor. It's still a little cool, so it's still a little moisture there, but that's fine. It shouldn't affect the next thing. What we're going to do now is we're not going to be doing wet and wet like we've been doing this whole time. We're just going to be playing with pigment almost straight from the tube, now building up upon this. I'm going to stay within this color scheme of these two pigments. If I wanted to, could grab the India ink and continue with that to darken up some areas. We could also utilize our a black wash or black watercolor paint. But these two pigments mixed together really do hold up enough on their own to make enough darks. So I'll play around with those. And we're going to get a little bit more crisp on top of this. There's quite a bit of water still in this mixture. What'll happen is it'll dry a little bit lighter, and we can work our way forward with larger, pigment loads, less water, and that'll add just a variety to it, rather than just being flat in value. We have edges here, so we kind of have the concept of lost and found edges. We have the wet and wet, the diffusion that's underneath, and a little bit more specificity, I guess. Take that hake dry brush, catch the surface of this water. With the water, horizontal movements help create a horizontal plane. So think of water as being a horizontal plane receding into the painting. And you can use the hake. With a little bit of practice, you can get these lines that go up straight like that. So even though it's like, what, an inch wide or more, on that angle, the chiseled edge, you can create that up. You can also use a squirrel mop. You also use the rigger. I guess I'm literally just not wanting to put this brush down and pick up the other brush. I think I'm going to bring this landmass out front to kind of choke off this area. And I could even give a stronger foreground tree. I looked at the screen. I have a cheap little Kindle right there, which my mom bought me. Thank you, Mom. A few years ago, and I have it set up so I can watch the live stream. And I noticed that I carelessly did not bring my tree to the top of the paper. So it's good to kind of follow through with those. I know exactly what my mom will say when she watches this. She'll be like, "Oh my God." She'll probably say, "My God," something like that. And say, "People are going to probably think I was a terrible mom." Something like that. let's switch over to the rigger. Put out a little bit of Quin Rose. Yeah, Hammy. Quin Rose. What's up, buddy? Meow. Hammy's like my buddy, like my best friend cat. It was the worst when work started back up, and because I like just hanging out and painting with Hammy. We were just hanging out on the couch with Hammy. So I'm using the rigger just to put down more concentrated pigment in the hopes that we'll get more of a tonal depth effect. Yep, that's right, Hammy. I'm just thinking compositionally for a moment how I want this to look. Bring this over those lighter areas, a little bit of contrast. Hammy. I from one of the from Hobby Lobby, from the art store, for a still life I bought a fake bird nest with the fake bird eggs, and I had set up a still life to oil paint. And I've been in the process of doing that. It has like a few sessions on it. I've been taking a different approach to oil painting than I used to. Anyway, Hammy got to that fake bird nest. He didn't destroy it, but I should have known that. Would have done that. In fact, that reminds me of a story in college. I took art classes in college. My degree is not in art, it's in math and physics. I took art classes for fun. And one of our homework assignments for like a painting class was to take a piece of paper, crumple it up, and do a painting of the crumpled up piece of paper. I think it was to see the edge values, the turns of the paper, the tonal shapes, etc. Anywho, my job, I had a on-campus job. I was a RA, a resident assistant, and I was on duty. So I was like, okay, I'll sit in the office at night, and paint. You wait and see if anybody calls, if they need any help or locked out or anything like that. Anyway, so I'm in there painting, and one of my coworkers came in, walked, looked at me, and he picked up the crumpled paper and like opened it up to look at. He picked it up and opened it up, and I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, I mean, I couldn't recrumple the paper in the way it was. So it was a very weird scenario. Okay, So let's do another dry off. We'll see where we're at. I might actually take some of the Chinese ink and put it on top of all this and see what happens. So if you have earbuds on, watch your ears for about 10 seconds. All right, some areas aren't completely dry yet, but that was kind of a dry phase with those two pigments. I think now we can experiment with another layer of just ink. So I have this little tray right here. Let's grab this Chinese ink and drop the cap. Probably don't even need that much. I'll pour more out in a second. It was splattering onto this and I don't want to get it all over. Should just pour out. There we go. And then not screw back on. Is it really gonna? No, there we go. It's probably like some dried ink underneath. I'll probably have to clean that. Let's see. Let's grab. Maybe try a different brush. Let's grab the number 4 rigger for a little bit more line variation. And we'll add an inked tree here. With the riggers, you can get nice flicks, calligraphy type strokes. You just have fun with them. And this is just to get more darker tonal value, to bring everything closer. I do want texture in it. Yep, Hammy. Okay. I don't want to block off the view, but I want to create some elements here. So that's the India ink on top of the watercolor, on top of the India ink. Really open up those branches up into the foliage. I think we may be close to the end. Let's see if there's anything else we really want to do. Could add a little dotted texture on there. Make sure you wash off brushes if you use ink, the India inks. And I'll wash them off in a moment when the film's done. But this we'll call the finished product. It's a good experiment. The cool thing is that, I'll reiterate, is that from the very beginning we used the yellow ink to kind of establish a slight light source, and it being waterproof, it didn't lift or mingle with anything else, and that was really cool. Then we played with their inks on top of that. Then we played wet and wet watercolor. Then we did dry brush. And then we went back to that ink, the Chinese ink. So I hope you enjoyed. Of course, like something like this, it's kind of very specific. But if you ever want to follow along with any of these, feel free. And if you ever want to, you also have my express permission, where if you want to sell whatever you paint, from one of these paintings, go for it. All right, so I'm going to sign it. I'm going to show it what it looks like underneath the mat. And then I'll sign it off. So there you go. I'm going to have to tilt the camera a little bit. There's the results. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed. And I will talk to y'all soon. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.